Good morning, Trinidad and Tobago, to all of yours across the wider region and the world. Welcome to Talking Point here on WESN, the content capital. My name is Keaton Shaw. Folks, we will be joined by our guest at around 8:30 a.m. as we continue the discussion into the abuse as reported in the Justice Judith Jones report into children's homes across Trinidad and Tobago. We will also be joined by our guest commentator for Tuesdays, former youth parliamentarian Camille Pascal, hopefully very shortly. But in the meantime, there are two things in particular, three things that we'd like to address. But before we get into that, let me introduce my co-host, colleague, and good friend, Mr. Sean Michael Small. Good morning, Sean.
Good morning, Keaton. And the irony that I find myself in these last few weeks, I am much more pessimistic about the state of things now than I was at the height of the pandemic, when there was so much questions with regards to our economy, so much questions with regards to the virus itself and what it would mean, when we had so many people dying on a daily basis from the virus, and we still do have 4 to 5 the last couple of days, which is not necessarily a good sign, because at the end of the day, elderly or not, these are still people we're talking about, and it's a sign that the more open we are, the more we could accept people essentially losing their life as we try to move forward. But it is something about the circumstances now and how things are unfolding now, just in aggregate, that has me very much concerned. And I'm not going to necessarily say it's all the government's fault. Obviously, the government is not in charge of what goes on around the world and what everybody in the country decides to do or not to do, how responsible to act or not to act. But just overall, because the crime as well, yes, some of it is the fault of the authorities not doing a good job, but a lot of it too, this, I don't know what to call it, a new wave, a different wave of crime, a different feeling of desperation with some of these crimes. The sum total is, I feel as though we need to stop accepting, again, it goes back to what we said last year, business as usual thinking is foolish and foolhardy. And that's what we seem to be getting from the leadership, so.
Oh, well, just to add to your worries and concerns, my friend, just before we get into the two main topics we'd like to address this morning, the Minister of National Security has rebutted and refuted calls on the part of the opposition United National Congress for him to resign. He's indicated that while he agrees that crime has really increased criminal activity, he believes that the situation can be reversed with cooperation among citizens as well as the corporate entities within Trinidad and Tobago. He also indicated that the only individual that can judge his performance is Prime Minister Dr. Keith Rowley. Now, he may be right from the perspective of internal politics within the People's National Movement and perhaps within the sitting government, though he's absolutely wrong on the wider scale and perhaps the more appropriate scale in relation to how citizens feel, as well as the expressions on the part not only of citizens, but as well as all entities and all stakeholders involved within the progression and the, I suppose, the steamrolling engines of Trinidad and Tobago. So, of course, again, politics will play its role. The opposition time and time again has called for various members of the government to be fired or to resign. In fact, I think one Senator, David Naked, he's called on the entire government to be fired.
Yeah, well, things like that,
anyway.
You kind of disqualify your opinion when you just throw out things like that. Now, here's the irony with Minister Hines' statement. Technically, he is right in the sense of if we elect people via party only, well, he's right. His job performance matters not. What matters is, will the PNM be elected in the next election or not? And regardless of what his job performance is, the only person he has to worry about is the opinion of the Prime Minister, the political leader, first and foremost.
Well, I'm just actually rather impressed that he's actually finally commented after silence over the crime situation here in Trinidad and Tobago over how many weeks now, what we're seeing and what we've experienced, the upsurge particularly with murders. I'm not surprised exactly what he's commented on, but I'm pleased, I suppose, that, hey, we finally heard from our Minister of National Security.
So therein lies, really and truly, the irony of the situation. Because I could easily see where, between the constraints, lack of resources, because he can't make money appear out of thin air. Ministry of National Security does not have special money trees just reserved for them. If that's a problem, there are a lot of things that might limit what Minister Hines could do. I get that. The problem also is ballooning beyond what is the norm. I get that as well. Circumstances are beyond what is the norm. Understandable. The failure in Minister Hines' job performance is not to do something that other ministers of national security also could not do. Because let's be fair, we have had this crime situation, for the last 10 years or more? The failure of Minister Hines is how he communicates the matter, which is similar to the failures, generally speaking, of the government, most politicians, which is my experience. So, he is literally communicating himself to looking bad. And when a politician whose primary job is to make himself look good is acting in such an unproficient way, inproficient? Forgive me, is acting in such a way that his lack of proficiency, let's circumvent that, his lack of proficiency is making him look worse. Because that's essentially what it is. He is not managing the situation. He's not managing our expectations. He's not communicating things, telling us, okay, this is the reality here, this is reality there, this is what we're going to try to do, this is how we're going to try to compensate for certain challenges, this is how things... No, there's nothing there. That's not his job. That is the job for some mythical crime czar in government, a position that does not exist, that idealistically we all hope for, but we will never get. The Minister of National Security, that's not his job. His job is to sit in a seat and to basically not be effective at whatever it is else he's supposed to do if crime is not, if the safety and security and the feeling of safety and security of the population in the country is not his responsibility, then Lord, I wonder, what are you supposed to be doing then? I don't know.
Anyway, just to update you as well on a situation that we are monitoring currently to try and get more information on, but a mother and son were found dead at Lachus Penal Road in Penal this morning. 31-year-old Abelia Cujo and her 12-year-old son, Levi Andrews, were found dead. It is believed that they were murdered, but we do not have more information at this point. Throughout the day, you can keep an eye on WSN News on the hour for the latest updates. But a 31-year-old and her 12-year-old son found dead this morning. Ladies and gentlemen, if I've repeated myself a million times before, let me add one more to that count. We are falling apart. Trinidad and Tobago is a broken society. Now, let's get into the main topic, the main conversation for this morning, and this is in relation to missing 2-year-old Kimani Francis. Now, there was a massive land, sea, and air operation, search operation, that started yesterday morning and continued into last night. It's continuing again this morning to search for 2-year-old Kimani Francis, who went missing after he wandered off from his teacher village, Point Fortin home yesterday morning. Now, according to reports, as indicated by various media outlets, a resident contacted the police after she saw the child on the road at around 10:20 a.m. She told police officers she tried to follow Kimani but lost sight of him. By the time police arrived, the child was nowhere to be found. The child's mother, Kimberly Charles, 22 years old, a cashier, told police that she saw her son home at around 10 a.m. She only realized that he was not in the house when an emergency response patrol officer alerted her at around 10:30 a.m. and her son was wandering along the road. According to the Point Fortin mayor, who spoke to Ms. Charles indicated that she was at home, but she was on her phone doing work at the time. So, ladies and gentlemen, first of all, let me make it absolutely clear. I pray and I hope that 2-year-old Kimani Francis is found. And when I say found alive. I hope this child is alive, and when they find him, he's healthy and well. to get into the parts of this story that are absurd. First of all, people may think, Keaton, you're being rather insensitive. It is the wrong time. Now is the right time to talk about this, in my opinion. 22-year-old mother at home, working on your phone for half an hour, 30 minutes. You indicated that you believed that your aunt was in the house and your aunt left, so the door was open and the child walked off. Adding to all this, you did not even realize your child was missing until a police officer called you to inform you that he was reported as missing. He was seen wandering. This is absolute negligence on the part of the mother. I'm very sorry. I know right now you're facing a traumatic situation, but I'm not going to wait until we get news as to how the search has ended, where it has ended, if it ends at all. To say that this is poor parenting and absolute negligence. This is a 2-year-old child. Your child is supposed to be in your sight at all times. At all times. Have we not learned anything at all from the 2 children who unfortunately drowned after they were unsupervised while swimming in pools? The main part of this is that you left your child unsupervised, a 2-year-old in your home. You said you left your child at 10 o'clock eating fruit, at least according to this report. And at 10:30 a.m., you didn't even realize he was missing. Or you weren't aware of his whereabouts until a police officer called you. According to this report, I'm sorry, but it's absolute poor parenting and negligence on the part of you. And I'm only wondering, should Kimani be found alive, and I pray to God and I hope that he is, whether or not he should be back in your hands, whether or not you are responsible enough to look after the child. And then adding to this, the resident who contacted police after she saw the child. Listen, I'm grateful that you contacted and notified the police and informed the police, but you're seeing a child in Pampers wandering the road and you do nothing. You say you tried to keep an eye on the child, but you lost sight of him. Perhaps the more responsible thing to do would have been to secure the child until the police arrived at the location. Secure the child or take the child to the police station. Don't try to keep eyes on him. And this is a 2-year-old child. This is hot morning in Trinidad and Tobago. The child was barefoot according to reports, wearing only Pampers. Ladies and gentlemen, I am forever grateful for the response on the part of the entire village, from the response on the part of the TTPS, the Air Guard, the K9 unit, the fire service, the army, the member of parliament, the council for the area, as well as the mayor for Point Fortin, all those villagers came out searching for this child. Extreme Hunters Group came out searching for this child. I am grateful for them. I really hope and pray that this child is found. But I'm absolutely appalled as to the reports, especially on the part of the parent. I truly feel sorry for what you're facing this morning, but I am not sorry for having to inform you that you hold responsibility. It is poor parenting and negligence on your part. And I'm wondering, if Kimani Francis is found alive, whether the authorities are willing to put him back in your care. Sean, why is it that we always have to learn about children suffering or paying the price for poor responsibility on the part of parents or the wards looking after the children? It is not an easy job having a child. You have to balance life with so many things. Working, ensuring that your child is fed, ensuring that your child is safe. But at the end of the day, in balancing life, your first priority is your child. That child should have been in your sight at all times. At the end of the day, Sean, at this point, I suppose we can only hope and pray and wait for some positive news.
All right. So, there's a part of me that wants to say, well, we cannot rush to judgment, right? That's generally where you get into trouble. Don't rush to judgment. There's a lot of things you don't know. Maybe the person who saw the child walking down the road is unable to walk. We don't know. However, it is now almost 24 hours and the child is 2 years old. And as much as there is still a reasonable chance, or at least not an insignificant chance, that he will be found alive, let me be the pessimist and say that there's a very good chance that the reverse is also possible. Now, at the end of the day, we're talking about the potential of a life, a young life, a very young life, of someone who does not have the capacity to know what is best for himself. So now, we do have to weigh that against, well, we don't want to be judgmental and harsh to the people involved, but we have to weigh that against, these are high stakes. It is fundamental that a society protects the lives of its children, whether from those with bad intentions or those with good intentions but are unable to carry out the task, because at the end of the day, literally, your children are your society's future. Literally. And I understand how easy it might be. Because I remember working in Tobago not too long ago, or I think it was the year before, there was a drowning at one of the establishments in Tobago. And from that moment on, I always warned families, listen, keep an eye on your children. Keep an eye on your children. I made it a point to insist on it and to not assume. Yes, it might be a little bit insulting. Some people might think, oh, are you trying to say I'm not a good parent? But I made it a point of emphasis because I did not want to take it for granted. Because, ironically, the following year, I told a family this: please, a child drowned in a pool, keep an eye on your children around the pools, do not let them go unsupervised. And they informed me that they were family members to the drowned child, so they were very well aware. And to their credit, they did not hold it against me. I think they were a little bit appreciative of the situation. That I was trying to make sure that kids did not get into any sort of trouble, or we did not have any unfortunate accidents. With children, an unfortunate accident at a young age. That child was 6, by the way. I remember when I was 6, I was walking around by myself. Somehow, I looked down and I thank God I was lucky enough not to cause myself to get hurt in an accident because I didn't know what I didn't know. It's a 2-year-old child. I understand it might be harsh, but we need to have a certain level of expectation and standards for this sort of thing.
Ladies and gentlemen, Sean, I understand what you're saying in relation to, let us not rush to judge, because you can get into trouble for that. Everything that I've said is based off of the reports that have come forward. Furthermore, adding to that, you're right in relation to perhaps the individual who called the police couldn't walk. But there were other individuals as well in there who spotted the child wandering.
And then to what extent now do we have to ask, the whole thought of I don't want to get involved is an issue for our society? This is what happens when people do not get involved.
In this instance, I really cannot see any sense of an excuse as to why it is that you wouldn't want to get involved. You're seeing a 2-year-old child wandering. Folks, we do have with us now via Zoom our guest commentator for Tuesdays. He's former youth parliamentarian Kemuel Pascal. Good morning, Kemuel.
Good morning, Keita, and good morning, Sean, as well. Good morning to your viewers and listeners. It's my pleasure to be here for another Tuesday.
Kemuel, it's a pleasure to have you here with us. Sorry to just jump on you like that. I know that we had you waiting in the Zoom. But I'm bringing you in now because I'm just wondering if you've been following this story. What were your initial reports, your thoughts on the reports that were coming in, that we were being fed through various reporting outlets?
Initially, when I saw the story, my first, when I read the story, I should say, my first thought was the fact that it is alleged that someone, a neighbor or a villager, would have seen the child walking, and then they would have gone to alert the family. That's what I read from a particular news source. And I questioned, I was like, you are seeing a 2-year-old child that's obviously small, walking on the road by himself, and your first instinct is to go and tell the parent instead of actually taking the child and carrying the child to the parent. You left the child rather to walk along the roadway, and that baffles me. But then there's also the perspective of supervision on the part of the parent. Then you also think about the fact that children at that age move very quickly. So I am baffled and hoping for the best at this point.
Well, we are all baffled and we are all hoping for the best at this point. I know in times like this, people say you need to be sensitive and you need to be understanding. It's a traumatic experience and you will never truly understand what the parent is facing. But in society now, the way things are, I'm actually very exhausted with really trying to sprinkle some sugar on these situations, with trying to be as positive as can be to the point where it's unrealistic. And unfortunately this morning, I had to, and I make no apologies for stating, in my opinion, based off of all reports and indications, what is obvious. A lack of responsibility, poor parenting, and in my opinion, negligence. You left a child for 30 minutes on your own. You weren't even aware that the door to your home was open. You weren't aware that the child was missing until the police called you.
Ironically, I could, well, maybe not when I was 2. When I was older, I do have memories that if I was, I don't know, crazy enough, I could have gone wandering off into Lord knows where, right? My thing really is not so much the parents. It really is the people who saw a child wandering down a road by himself.
That is also a huge part of the story.
I get it. But a parent has basically the entire life of the child to make a mistake. But we're talking, you see the child. A parent's vigilance might drop a little bit here and there. Parents do make mistakes, I get it. Sometimes mistakes are big, I get it. You are seeing a child doing something that I would think the child is not supposed to be doing. And in the past, when I was in that situation, I intervened. And yes, I understand. I don't like to deal with other people's children because I am not their parent. And I do not want their parent come and accusing me of doing whatever. But the child is wandering off down the road. And if what is that multiple people saw it, then I just need to ask, what was going through your brains when you saw a child wandering by themselves? Did you just assume the mother was around?
Also, to add to what you're saying, Sean, again, let me repeat myself so we make it clear and so people will understand that I'm not trying to be unfair. But again, I completely understand that parenting is not easy. And you're right. You have the entire life of the child to make mistakes. You are going to make mistakes. That's the only way you're going to learn, really. It's not an easy job, and you are allowed to make mistakes. In this instance, I'm not sure whether or not to call this a mistake or whether or not it was just... I'm not sure if to label this a mistake at all. To be quite honest with you, this is too huge of a mistake to make as a parent, if we want to call it a mistake at all. This is too much. But as I said, in having a child, there's so many responsibilities and so many things that you need to try and balance. But your first priority will always be your child. Your first priority, your first responsibility will always be your child, and ensuring the child is safe and kept well.
I'm sorry, Camille. I just remember when my nephew was 4 and we were always, because he was a hyperactive as a small child, we were always very cognizant of where is the road, if the door is open, etc., etc., etc. according to one report, the child was walking towards a bridge. He's 2. There's no adult within sight. I don't know. I don't know, Camille, if you have anything more to add, but I just...
It's mind blowing in a sense to even attempt to make sense of the matter at hand right now. And as you mentioned before, sensitivity, yes, we're being sensitive, but we're also examining the factors that could have possibly not led to the situation that we are in right now, which is parents being more responsible in some instances. I can't speculate and say, well, the mother was responsible, but to some extent, the parent does share some amount of responsibility. So I think it's a matter of us examining the entire circumstance and even looking within ourselves and within our own families to see where we can ensure that things like this doesn't happen to us. And if we can even go further to speak about the fact that this is the 4th tragedy involving, well, I don't want to call it a tragedy because they haven't found each other yet, but if it goes in that particular direction, this will be the 4th tragedy involving children within the last 2 months, because we had 3 drownings and now a missing 2-year-old.
And listen, prevention, they say, is cheaper and more effective than the cure. If one of the people who spotted the child intervened at that moment, look how much we would have avoided. Because the whole apparatus, and I am very proud to know that our country could mobilize in such a way to do this search effort. But these things are not easy. You know, it's not like we could just do this all the time, just so. And more importantly, by the time it reaches this point, the results are in doubt. The results are in doubt. Whereas we had, at the early stages, a surefire save. And it might not seem that important then, but that's the point, to prevent emergencies from happening. And I do have to wonder if this is just a symptom of our population's lack of willingness to be more involved generally in anything outside of their immediate concern.
In concluding the conversation, Camille, thank you for your thoughts as well as Sean. As you know, rightfully reminded by one of our directors, it takes a village to raise a child, and the response in the part of the entire village, as well as the authorities, we committed. Kimani, we are praying and we are hoping for your safe return. We are really praying and hoping for your safe return. At this point, ladies and gentlemen, we will conclude on this particular topic, and we will anxiously await updates throughout the day. Folks, we break now here on Talking Points, and when we return, we welcome our guests to continue the conversations this morning. Stay tuned.
North Coast Jazz 2022. Day 2, Event 2. The big day is Family Saturday. And the biggest stars are performing on festival grounds. Michelle Sylvester, Ruel Lynch, Patrick Gordon, Adam Hagley featuring Tony Paul, Leandra Head, Johan Chuckery, Sharon Phillips, Freetown Collective, powered by festival band Dean Williams and Company. Each master talent will perform a song from Lord Nelson's wide catalogue. Saturday, Family, May 28th. Together again. Festival grounds, Blanchisseurs. Family, a tribute to Lord Nelson. North Coast Jazz and Heritage Festival 2022. 3 days, 3 events, 3 experiences. Born here, laid here.
Get your tickets now at Crosby St. James, Extra Foods Arima, Sanguine Grande, Grand Bazaar, Endeavour and Chaguanas, Digicel Trend City and C3 Malls, and Digicel Head Office, 11C Maraval, WESN 38 Gattaca Street, Woodbrook, Suntix.com, or call our ticket hotline at 628-5835 or 681-1516.
Tune in to WESN Content Capital from May 5th to 13th as we bring you exclusive coverage of the TTCB's T20 Festival. 8 teams will face off at the Cricket Centre in Balmain, Couva. Follow us for the live action only on WESN Content Capital, your home for cricket.
We dare you to dream, to see beyond the struggle. to envision the possibilities, to live life with unlimited vision. Ferrera Optical supports you with complete eyewear starting at only $795. Let's make those dreams a reality. So book your visit via 227-7000, WhatsApp message 278-2878, or at FerreraOptical.com today. We dare you to keep going. Ferrera Optical says, don't limit your vision.
Is it politics? What is it? Is it that nobody cares about sports?
The kind of support that sport used to get in the past is no longer here.
The thing is, taking a knee doesn't mean that that's the only thing you're doing on it.
Right.
Taking a knee along with other stuff.
Samantha, what are you looking forward to when you return home to Trinidad and Tobago after winning the title?
Thank you very much for speaking it into existence.
Is it no pressure on Nicholas Ball?
It makes me more motivated to work hard and to go out there and rep the red, white and black.
Why are we sending a team to the Winter Olympics?
There are a number of Trinbagonians who are in the diaspora and have grown up in winter sport. It's an opportunity that the Trinidad and Tobago Olympic Committee will not close the door on.
I also believe in the players that we have. Once you can motivate the players, you can get the best out of them.
If you live with someone who's tested positive for COVID-19 and has to self-isolate at home, take care of them from a distance and reduce their movement around the house. Give them space, a designated space, and open those windows. If you have to be in contact, mask up, both of you. If you work, stay home from work and don't go out. Not even to the grocery or pharmacy. And remember, no visitors allowed. Limit the contact to limit the spread.
The Trinidad and Tobago Red Cross Society. Mission-based, people-focused, community-driven.
Welcome back to Talking Point here on WESN. Continuing the discussions this morning, we have with us via Zoom the former chairman of the Children's Authority, Hanif Benjamin. Good morning, Mr. Benjamin.
Good morning, and thank you for having me, and good morning to all your viewers and listeners throughout the world.
Well, Mr. Benjamin, it's a pleasure to have you on the program once more. And before we get into a focus in relation to the Judith Jones, retired Justice Judith Jones report into child abuse within childcare homes across Trinidad and Tobago, as well as the role and the responsibility on the part of the Children's Authority. I know that off air we were speaking and you were indicating that you have been following this story in relation to the search for the missing 2-year-old Kimani Francis. I know that you said that you're willing to reach out to the family to see in whatever way you can assist.
Most definitely, because I can't imagine how traumatic this might be for the family, and the family might be going through a myriad of stressors right now. And at the Center for Human Development, we're always willing to work with whomever we can to provide the level of comfort and care from a traumatic and mental health perspective. So definitely we'll be trying to make contact to see how might we be able to provide services to this family as the search continues in this unfortunate circumstance.
Very unfortunate indeed. Again, I think you were also mentioning very quickly the fact that we perhaps have lacked the mindset or the idea that our children are foremost our priorities and our responsibility.
Most definitely, and you see it all throughout, including the report and all of that. We have to pay particular attention to our children, understanding that they are the vulnerable population and they need protecting. They cannot protect themselves. And so we must understand our role as protectors, what that means for our children. I mean, I'm hearing in the report that people saw this child and for the love of me, I cannot understand why not intervene? And this goes along with so many other circumstances where people see issues with children outside in the mall, in groceries, and they will not, get involved. And so it is important, and what is even more dire is that, the Children's Authority has hotlines that they can call in anonymously and all of these things. So the mechanisms are in place for us to do what we need to do. But I think that we have become so reclusive where we just want to take care of ourselves and don't get involved, that we leave our vulnerable children to the elements out there. And that is a sad place that we are in.
Well, Mr. Benjamin, one of the things that I thought about was the fact that could this be why we now have these situations? I mean, first we had discussions with regards to violence in schools, but now we have a report on abuse. So not only do we have to worry about a lot of our society not willing to be the village that we need to help raise and protect our society's children, but also now we have a situation where the people whose job it is to do so seems to be in question or in doubt as to whether or not they're even willing to fulfill the obligations that they're being paid for.
And you are quite right, and there is nothing new in this report. And if you go back to 1997 and even beyond that, it is the same thing that is being said over and over and over. And to be quite honest with you, we have to understand this in the context of child protection. And child protection is not just an agency, but child protection is a system of care that we are not seeing. Child protection is understanding the system that surrounds a child or children and to ensure that that system is operating at a place where it does what it needs to do. And if that does not happen, we see what is happening now, which is a constant breakdown of all the systems that are in place because they are not working the way it's supposed to work. We are not holding people accountable when it does not work, and we are not minded, again, to put children first to make the difference that is needed. And I've been saying this for quite some time. Why at the Children's Authority, while some of these things were very much known to us and we inherited from decades and decades of abuse, and we would have been working assiduously to put things in place, it cannot work unless and until the full system understands what it needs to do. And we have seen time and time again where people charged with the responsibility have abnegated that responsibility, sometimes criminally so, and we're still dancing.
Well, Mr. Benjamin, just before I bring in Kemio Pascal, because Kemio Pascal is with us via Zoom as well, based on what you said, and as we now examine the reports and the recommendations within the reports, you mentioned that this is a situation that has been ongoing for decades. It's nothing that is necessarily new, and I know that you also indicated that at your time, during your time as chairman of the Children's Authority, much of the recommendations that were made in the report, you also made, and it was on all levels, it was just thrown out. In relation to that, because we knew that this was taking place and because we failed to act, has the Children's Authority overall failed in their statutory responsibility, and has the state failed in protecting the children of Trinidad and Tobago?
I would not say that the authority failed in its statutory responsibility. I would say that there were failings within the Children's Authority. That is very clear, right? And that is something that has always been a challenge. The question for me is, knowing that, what do you do? And that is what, as chairman and the board, began to do immediately. By understanding that the statutory responsibility in terms of the Children's Authority were not in line with the practice. And so it was important to understand the staffing were not adequate to do what was necessary. The question has always been whether we needed more staff or we needed the right staff. The Children's Authority was set up to cater for 1,200 cases a year. In the first 9 months of its operation, they got 4,000 cases. So from the jump, your role in the statutory realm has been overshot because now you have to provide for more with less. And they have always been working backwards to try to deal with the situation. And so as a board, we recognize that we had to act. So we did a full HR audit that is going to tell us what we needed, which happened. From that, we began a restructuring exercise that was near 98% complete when I demitted office. And so the wonder is, why didn't it continue? We also looked at the legislative review because there was legislation that needed to change to allow the authority to operate more effectively and more efficiently. And that, again, was completed by this board and submitted to the Office of the Prime Minister for onward forwarding to the Office of the Attorney General. And so we recognized, John, that we needed to get the changes happening in the authority because legislatively and practice were not combining. And so, for example, in licensing of children's homes, people talk about that. We recognize that a lot of these homes could not be licensed based on the premise of what the recommendations were. And so you had to become creative and create other kind of licensure to allow homes to license. Again, that was well on its way. So why didn't it continue is also a mystery to me. And so when you talk about the legislative mandate and the role of the authority, we recognize that things had to change in order for the authority to do what it needed to do and do it successfully. And we also had the biggest problem, which is the right people to do the right job. And that in itself created a conundrum because you would imagine from an IR and HR perspective to get people to move up, move out, move around so that we could get the best fit was also very challenging.
Well, let me just ask Kemuel here because what Mr. Benjamin has just said echoes things that we've heard, things that we've seen reports with regards to other, whether it's state entities, ministries, government-owned entities that have issues. It could be lack of resources, staff shortages. Usually it's because the staff is over-bloated and too much money is being pumped into those entities. In this case, it seems as though we have a bit of the reverse. Kemuel, I do have to ask, usually when these problems come up, all politicians say the right buzzwords, tell us all the right things, give us all of the right well-intentioned statements about how we'll fix this, or we all children are important, so we will do what is right, and they try to placate the problem. But, I mean, even without Mr. Benjamin telling me, I had a sense that this was a problem from long before. I do have to ask, is this a situation where, politically speaking, we suffer from negligence, or is it just that we don't have the competency in the leadership when it comes to dealing with projects like these that are not just the day-to-day standard business?
It's a matter of both. And I say that because of the fact that childcare and child welfare isn't something that we should take lightly and isn't something that we should even attempt to insert politics into. It's a matter of developing and molding a child because that child eventually spills over into society and we will see the byproducts of their childhood in the way they develop as an adult. And that's what we are seeing right now. So if within the homes and from a leadership perspective above, people who are charged with responsibility are not taking their responsibility seriously, what we are seeing right now in society is in a sense, a byproduct of failed childhood. And so it really saddens me that we have to be sitting here discussing things from a report when we've had previous reports which spoke to the same things over the years. It's a matter of we lack the competence and we are simply lazy as politicians to actually do the work that needs to be done, because you are speaking about a child and you wonder why we have to be pumping so many billions into crime, so many billions into other areas of our economy when that can be channeled in other areas when we are failing from the very start, from the inception.
Well, Mr. Benjamin, I'm bringing you back here because I very much agree with Kemuel that in the care of, as we look after our children, and we try to prioritize the care, the well-being, the health of our children, we need to remove politics from it. But the difficulty in doing so is that the Children's Authority is a statutory board. It falls under the remit of the Office of the Prime Minister, and politics will be involved. You know, that's the difficult part in really having these conversations. But, you know, in trying to understand this a bit better, I must ask you, in your time, these recommendations, which are now being put forward once more, of which millions of dollars are going to be spent on to implement, any indication as to why it was thrown out or rubbished during your time as chairman?
Well, I don't know if that's the correct terminology that I would use in terms of thrown out or rubbish. I believe what Kemuel has said there is to me, the crux of the matter, in that, have we prioritized children and child care and child protection? We are signatories to a lot of convention, but are we at a place in this country where we have placed children as the priority? Because to pay, we will pay. We will pay now or we will pay more later down in crime and criminogenic factors. And or broken children who becomes broken adult and cannot add value to the system. And so one way or the other, we will pay. And so if we do not understand the synergistic implication between Ministry of Social Development and people and the amount of money you have to pump there to help broken families and people, if we do not understand the crime and the Ministry of National Security and the amount of money we have to pump there, and we are not understanding that the nexus is our children, then we are spinning top. And I think that, to me, is the priority. Just all of a sudden, we have 126 million. Had this board had 126 million, we would have worked miracles with the trajectory of what this board had planned and was already planning. So a lot of the recommendations were already in place, and that is what I'm talking about. When we left office, these recommendations were already in place. Our board worked tirelessly with management to restructure, and we worked tirelessly with the Office of the Prime Minister and PMCD to get this restructuring exercise almost completed. What happened? Those are questions I need answered. We completed a deep dive into every child piece of legislation, and we did a comprehensive review and sent it to the Office of the Prime Minister to change the law. What happened? These are questions that we need to answer. We began putting things in place to deal with some of the community residences and the issues there. We began to put things in place to deal with our own reception centers. What happened then? And so I don't think that it is rubbish. I think we need answers as to where and what happened. And in my view, what this report should have said is that these things were put in place or in train and needs to be further along. And that is not what I'm hearing. And it gives the impression that nothing has been done. But in actuality, 90% of those recommendations were already done and or put in place. But it comes back to the will, political and otherwise, to place children first. And until we do that and recognize that it's the same report being recycled every 10 years, we will continue to hurt children. And I tell you this, hurt children grow up to be hurting adults. Hurting adults hurt society.
Well, it's amazing how you mentioned a report being recycled every 10 years. And one of the instances of it that is being recycled is the fact that one home in particular was flagged to ensure that their operations were seized due to the reports of negligence and abuse that emanated from within that particular home. In your opinion, as we focus mostly on the attention needed for children and childcare, if a home is not actually practicing that level of responsibility as is their duty and purpose, as is their function, should that home now not be funded by the state and also cease to operate? Or is it that...
Do you have a... Go ahead.
Sorry, or is it that in doing that we are again losing focus on the fact that children reside within this home? What are we going to do with these children if that is the case?
Let me tell you something, and this is where I've always had an issue. And I've said it, to the food industry, your quality and your customer service is your risk. For the financial industry, money and the propensity to make more money is your risk. In child protection, death and or a damaged childhood is our risk. And in that vein, we cannot wait. We cannot barter with whether or not, well, if we close the home, where the children going to go, but the children are being abused, so what do we do? That is not a conversation I am willing to have. When it comes to me, you close the home and we provide what we need to for the children, period. And one of the first acts as chairman when I came in there, as a matter of fact, in September of 2017, we came in August, there was a plan to close a couple of homes that were flagged over and over and over. And I maintain that when it comes to children, we cannot wait. We cannot wait, and we must have the will to do what we have to do. But when you are working in a system where you have a board of management who's supposed to be able to direct policies and direct people, and you have people who think that the board is interfering in operation, there is the conundrum. And so the law in itself has to change to give the board clear mandate. Because it was my belief and remain my belief that there are things that are happening that must be dealt with immediately. And until that is dealt with immediately, all we are doing is harming children. Every day a child stays in these places, they are harmed. And so we have to forego all political, all social, and all other type of worry, fear, or panic and protect the children. And that is a will that a lot of people lack, because they don't want to take the hard choice to say this has and must be done. And if you look at throughout the 3 years that I've been there, these recommendations have been made over and over and over. And I must say, it is heart-wrenching that children are still there being treated the same way in which we would have tried to deal with when we were there.
Well, Kemuel, we have about 2 minutes left, and I know for the most part of the interview you remained silent, and please forgive us, there was a lot to get in, but I'm going to give you the opportunity now to give your final thoughts or any question to Mr. Benjamin.
Sure. This is what I would say. Where is the monitoring and the evaluation? Now, we send children to those homes at ages 13, 14, 15. And in some instances, they return to their parents after a couple of years, depending on what age they would have gone in. And in some instances, they are left to continue in the system that supposedly have until they are 18 and then eventually churned out, right? In some instances. But when we send them out there, is any assessment made beforehand to ensure that over those years, they would have developed accordingly to be sent out? Because you remember, you are sending children out of an abusive situation. In some instances, they came from abusive homes, then to go into an abusive childcare system, and then they eventually come out into society at some point. So, is there any monitoring and evaluation in place to ensure that we are not sending out children that are, in a sense, damaged, basically, from a mental perspective?
We are not doing a great job. There's a licensing and monitoring department of the Children's Authority, whose job it is to ensure we have a situation where once the child falls under the purview of the Children's Authority, a treatment plan. Actually, by law, every child in residential care should have a treatment plan that informs the work that is to be done. I have often said it is a travesty that a child will come into our system at age 10, 11, 12, 3, 4, 5, and leave at 18, and just leave to the devices of society ill-prepared. That is a travesty, and that should change. It means then that the way we operate with our homes must also change. It means that the way we operate with our children and reintegration should be the priority. No child should sit in any home until they're 18 to then leave to come out to do work. And so that has to change, and more must be done, Kemal, to ensure that these plans are in place. But not only that the plans are in place, because if you have a pretty plan without the people to effect the plan, then the plan is good as dead.
Well, Mr. Benjamin,
so you must now ensure that the people are in place.
Well, Mr. Benjamin, I'm going to have to cut you there. I do apologize. That's all the time we have. But that seems to be a problem that we have generally here in Trinidad and Tobago, where we always have the wrong people doing the jobs. They're never the right people to fill the positions. Mr. Benjamin, thank you very much. Folks, we will continue the conversation with respect to childcare and child abuse here in Trinidad and Tobago. Mr. Benjamin will be on the program again soon, because there's a lot more to unpack and unfold. But for now, WSN breaks for news on the hour. When we return, the phone lines will be opened. Stay tuned.
Saturday, May 28th, the day we come together again as family. Master talent, great food, awesome vibe. Come have a good time. Family, a tribute to Lord Nelson.
It's tradition on the island. Nowhere else that I know is like
North Coast Jazz, born here, played here.
Seven is out, all day is in. WESN News on the hour.
Every day, we communicate through stories. Stories of ourselves, our challenges, our goals, our experiences, and our aspirations. Storytelling is an art that we have mastered. WESN Film Studios comprises a collaborative team of experts with extensive industry experience locally, regionally, and internationally. The ability of your business to successfully communicate with your preferred audience depends on the strength of the stories you tell. Your vision should be communicated in a high-quality, professional, and creative way. From concept to post-production, advertising to film, multi-camera productions, live events, streaming, and virtual conferencing, we are WESN Film Studio. Let your own unique voice be heard and your vision realized. Call us today at 628-5835 for your next production.
I am Rondell Donowa, attorney at law and host of Strictly Legal on WESN Content Capital. Strictly Legal is a legal program geared towards informing you, the public, of your legal rights, responsibilities, and remedies. So be viewing Thursdays 10 a.m. to 10:30 a.m.
Join me, Sule A. Joseph, as I delve into the day-to-day psychological issues plaguing our society. We will discuss behaviors that encompass the biological influences, social pressures, and environmental factors that affect how you think, act, and feel. Site, Thursdays at 11 a.m. Only on WESN, Content Capital.
AM Prime on WESN, the only place from 6 to 7:30 a.m. where you can get the most analytical and thorough interviews and regional reports.
The Barbados Labour Party, led by the Prime Minister Mia Amor-Motley, once again able to achieve a clean sweep in yesterday's general election.
I think a lot of people have underestimated the power of Tobago nationalism.
If the government is afraid to say it, I, Martin George, I am saying it this morning on your show, Andy. There will be no carnival before Ash Wednesday.
Grab a cup of coffee and start your day right watching AM Prime with Andy Johnson weekdays from 6 a.m. Only on your content capital, WESN.
In this season, we talk more about health, wellness, and everything in between. I am so excited to share with you everything about health and wellness so that you can design the life that you've always dreamed of. Join me here on What's Up Doc.
What's Up Doc? Tuesdays and Thursdays here on WESN, Content Capital.
North Coast Jazz 2022. Day 2, Event 2. The big day is Family Saturday. And the biggest stars are performing on festival grounds. Michelle Sylvester, Ruel Lynch, Patrick Gordon, Adam Hagley featuring Tony Paul, Leandra Head, Johan Chuckery, Sharon Phillips, Freetown Collective, powered by festival band Dean Williams and Company. Each master talent will perform a song from Lord Nelson's wide catalogue. Saturday, Family, May 28th. Together again. Festival grounds, Blanchisseurs. Family, a tribute to Lord Nelson. North Coast Jazz and Heritage Festival 2022. 3 days, 3 events, 3 experiences. Born here, played here.
Tickets available at Crosby, St. James, Extra Food Tarima, Grand Bazaar, Endeavour and Chaguanas, Extra Food Sagre Grande, Digicel, Twin City and Gulf City Malls, WESN, 38 Gattaca Street, Woodbrook, Suntix.com, or call our ticket hotline at 628-5835 or 681-1516.
Welcome back to Talking Point. Well, folks, now we give you the opportunity to have your opinions and thoughts expressed. If you'd like to comment on anything that we've said here in studio, you're more than welcome to. We always ask you to just be respectful and mindful of others. But the phone lines are open 623-9376, 622-9338. The numbers are on your screen. May I remind you to be mindful of the time. We want you to make your points. But please do not take 2 and 3 minutes to make your points. We'd like you to just bear in mind that, as we like to give other callers the opportunity. If you call and can't get through on one line due to it being busy, please call the other number.
While we wait, I'll just like to offer up, because I mentioned it before, I have dealt with the kids from these institutions, outside of the institutions. And everything that Hanif said there goes in line with what my experience is. Everything that Camilla has said goes in line with what my experience is, with how they have to go through this situation. They're coming from a bad situation, then they're living in a bad situation without their family, so they don't even have, there's no normalcy to their lives at all, only at 18 to just be booted out. It's a very rough and challenging thing to go through between the ages of 4 and 18, because there was one guy...
And then from 18 you're out.
There was one guy who might have been a success story because he got a scholarship to go to a private primary school. Just...
Yeah.
But yeah, that's how young it could be.
We do have a call on line with us from Pitty Valley. Good morning, caller.
Morning, gentlemen.
Good morning.
Morning.
Wow. This country, there's an indictment on this country, and people should hold their head in shame of how we treat our present leaders, future leaders. It is a travesty. We have been I don't know how we haven't get it right yet. The community that raised a child and all these different, there's an elephant in your room, and we could go on and on. You telling me that a child in a pamper, 2-year-old, several persons have been, there's on record, it has been recorded and nobody did nothing.
Yeah.
We are no longer our brother's keeper. There is a different spirit in this country, and we need to recognize it. That spirit of love, unity, being a brother's keeper is no longer there.
Yes.
It is a sad day that we are busy doing everything else, but not looking out for our children. That's our children are smoking, drugging, running away from home. Home is no longer a place of love. I hear Sean and my brother there that sometimes we parents drop the ball sometimes, and the best of us. But that's why the community, follow up and say, hey, look at your child, look and see your son.
Yeah.
And that type of camaraderie and spirit of looking out for each other, it is a sad. I to God that and gentlemen, I don't know. I haven't been in this business 30 years. We celebrate 30 years working with young people, and things are getting worse.
Getting worse, yeah.
I don't want to be a prophet of doom, and as Sean say, we don't need any business of passing, but I really hope somebody's listening to all you, and people are waking up because crime can only blossom when communities are fragmented. I pray to God that this child is found, Lord of mercy. It is a sad day. Today is already Friday the 13th. Gentlemen, have a blessed and wonderful day. Let's say a prayer. Not for this child, but for all the children that are negligent and have been deprived of basic fundamental rights. Very unfortunate.
Thank you very much,
Thank you,
caller.
caller.
No longer our brother's keeper, and I pray for Kimani's safe return. I really am. I'll be very honest with you. It's times like this I could see it on Kemuel's face. I know Sean and I, we actually do feel this, sir. We do get very emotional about it, and there's not much we can do. Sitting in this position, having to report on this, it's not easy. And as you said, we can only imagine what the family's going through. But I really hope and pray that Kimani's found, and I totally agree with the caller about no longer our brother's keeper, but we need to pray for this entire nation. We really, really need to, because we can act, we can all act. God helps those who help themselves, but really we've also lost that sense of godliness within us, and we really need to hope and pray that paradise lost will be paradise refound, hopefully. 623-9376, 622-933, the numbers on your screen. Call in and join us on the program. Kemuel, listening to that last caller, I really got chills just listening to that. The caller really sounds as though they're not only distraught by this, but they're genuinely hurting by this news.
As we were speaking about off air during the break, it's a double-edged, it's a two-edged sword, because on one hand, you really and truly consider the fact that the parent may have been negligent in the circumstance. The villager who would have seen the child and not carried the child to the parent may also have some part. But then the other side, you think about not just this child, but other children in Trinidad and Tobago who are in instances of abuse, even within a system that's supposed to protect them. And it just kind of makes you sad on the whole.
Yeah.
As you said, I really did feel the emotion from the caller.
Yeah, very much so. And we have a caller on the line with us from Santa Cruz. Good morning, caller.
Good morning, guys.
Morning.
Good morning. No good news today, unfortunately.
Oh, God. I mean, we could always find it, but first, let me just say, Kemuel, I apologize for keeping calling you Lemuel. Your name is Kemuel. Okay, so at least we can get a chuckle out of it.
I didn't even pick up that.
We might not have even known if you didn't say anything, so.
I knew. I'm sure he might have sensed it when I said it a couple of times. But I'm laughing. But guys, hearing this news this morning about this 2-year-old is really heartbreaking. Keaton, I stand with you in calling out this as a broken society. I'm near to tears because I have a 16-month-old granddaughter, right, and a 6-year-old grandson. I know how children are. Children are full of energy. Okay? Children are full of energy. They're new.
Yeah.
They're brand new. So whatever they experience, everything is new to them. And for the life of me, I don't understand why some parents feel that if they tell a little child to sit there, that the child is going to sit there. There are people who are parents that they're still children themselves and don't even understand life.
Yeah.
Okay? As Keaton was speaking this morning, I was feeling it. So yes, that mother is very responsible. First of all, you have a 2-year-old child you left eating. You don't take your eyes off of a child. The child could choke.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The child could choke.
Yeah.
And then you're there with your aunt who leaves and doesn't tell you that she's leaving and make sure that the house is secure. I am furious.
Yeah.
Okay, so Keaton, I stand. Sean, no, it's not a matter of judging anybody. Wrong and negligence is wrong and negligence. You should know better. And what I am noticing these days is that young women are having children, and because they're young and they can have children, they feel that children are, indispensable, or dispensable. So, okay, I could just make a next one. Not realizing the value of life. In Trinidad and Tobago, it seems as though there is no value for life.
Yes.
That's why you could go in the hospital and they just will allow you to die because it was the rush to save your life. Okay? So, it's not a matter of judging. Yes, the lady or the neighbor that may have made the phone call could not possibly have walked. She had a voice. She could have been shouting, telling people out in the street, stop the child. You mean no cars pass by to see a little child walking in the road by itself? To stop and say, hey, what is this little child doing here? So we have lost the value for life. Love is obligation. God does not help those who help themselves, because if we can help ourselves, we don't need God. So I can't stand in agreement with you there, Keaton. And finally, regarding the Minister of Security, yesterday, I wish you all had played this part in the news a moment ago, because yesterday he talked about all the crimes against children, and it's been on an increase. It's in the 600s this year already. It's on an increase. Why? Where is this depravity coming from?
Mm-hmm.
Is it a cause of this mandate that the powers that be have to frustrate things?
A mandate to
in this
frustrate.
country?
Yeah.
I'll rest here.
Thank you very much, Kola.
Try your best.
Thank you. Have a good day to you as well. It's very difficult to have a good day. Yesterday, I didn't end the show by saying today's a good day to have a good day, and I will not end the show with that as well. 6239376, 6229338.
It brings up, we're in an odd spot because there's this empty feeling of responsibility being on TV, because it's not as though we could do anything. We can't go there and just find a child. We can't tell the parent and tell her, hey, this is what you do. We could communicate over the airwaves or the internet now these days, modern technology. And it's still important what we do communicate, but there's an emptiness of the inability to act on anything.
Not pushing any conspiracy, but folks, I wouldn't be entirely surprised if there's more to this story than what we already know. You can assume. Camille, you wanted to just say something there?
Yeah, that's exactly what I was thinking. So I think there needs to be an intervention by the Children's Authority and the social services, because the parent could potentially have more children, and examine what is happening within the home.
Yeah.
To see if there's more to the story.
I agree. There needs to be intervention, and I'm just wondering if Kamani Francis is found alive, and I pray to God he is.
Yeah, what happens next?
What happens next, whether or not he goes back into the care of the parents. Cole on the line with us from Chagonas. Good morning, Cole.
Good morning, gentlemen.
Good morning, Professor.
Unfortunately, I couldn't get in yesterday, and you made a statement that the Prime Minister's job is not easy. Well, I must disagree with you. The Prime Minister has the easiest job. He is to see that we have law and order. You have a minister in each ministry to see it is done. To do this, they have to get an administrative report. 7 years ago, he criticized Mrs. Bishessa for being 4 years behind, and now he's 7 years. If you don't do your work, that does not make it a difficult work. So, talking about Tobago and these people for compensation, the problem there is the same problem we had here in the South Highway. The government was not following the land acquisition law. There was a big report done by a former independent Senator Armstrong, which lists all the problems. When the questions were sent to NITCO, they never replied to them. And then afterwards, long after, we find out the person who was in charge, which is against the law, was the Prime Minister herself, who was making these decisions. So that when they say people get paid in Tobago and this one they get, it's nonsense. Before anybody is paid in land acquisition, their title has to be checked by the Chief State Solicitor. And you don't pay squatters. This is what caused the problem in South. They were paying all kind of people who were not entitled to compensation. Any questions, gentlemen, before I give somebody else?
No, thank you. No, Professor, I have no questions to you.
Oh, the only thing, Professor, is in Tobago, there is an issue, a long-standing issue with regards to their records for who holds the titles, I believe, due to...
Tobago don't keep no title record. All the title records is kept by the land registry in Trinidad.
Right, but there was an issue with those records, and it caused essentially a problem with Tobago.
All right, Professor, thank you. Have a good day. Have a good day. 623-9376, 622-933 to call in and join us on the program. We have about 5 minutes left for phone calls this morning. But I know people here in Trinidad and Tobago waking up every morning and grateful for life. And as much as we're grateful for life, the irony, as Sean would say, as my coach would say, is the fact that it's very depressing now, your situation here. Very depressing for most people. You know, we don't know what's going to happen next. I'll briefly share with you that a very close friend of Sean and I, a mutual friend of Sean and I, you know, we got news that they faced that. Yes. They were a victim of, unfortunately, a home invasion. And the individual was not home at the time, but the rest of his family was, including his children. And you could imagine what was going through their mind. But we thank God, and we're grateful that the family is okay, and no physical harm was done. But it's hitting closer and closer to home. And I kid you not, last night I had a sleepless night because of that, just thinking about that. We have a caller on the line with us from Diego Martin. Good morning, caller.
Hi, good morning, gentlemen.
Morning, sir.
Well, I'm just calling to, my sorrow for this little child that has gone missing.
Yeah.
The parent or parents, I don't know. They are both parents or one. But parents got to realize now that children don't actually brought into this world, you know. They are brought into this world unknown. And when you bring a child into this world, you must be able to take care of it. If you have to be at the side all, especially at that age, between 2 and 5 years old, you have to be right around them all the time. Most as it could be, because crisis in there, they get distracted by it. I remember that my grandchildren and so on, when we ever used to go to have a bath in a pool or anything like that, and the parents walk away, I used to make sure and go and sit down there by the side of the pool and make sure that eyes are on them all the time.
Yeah.
Because children are unaware of the danger of life, and that is what we realize. I really hope and pray to God that this child will be covered safely. Nothing bad has happened to him. So that is, I called to express my sympathy with them as well. I hope everything works out, and you all have a good morning. Thank you.
Thank you, caller. You too. We praise to God as well that Kimani is found. We have time for one more caller, 623-9376, 622-9338. Camille, I'm going to come to you in a moment, but we do have one more caller online with us from Araval. Good morning, caller.
Morning, caller.
Yes. I am a senior Virginia with one foot in the grave. I still shudder to think about all the near accidents that I had little children. Of course, and I was not a teenage mother, by the way. Well, of course, my children are elders now, too, with their own children and grandchildren. But, you know, every now and again I think what it would be like if we perhaps had to get a license before we had a child.
Yeah.
Somewhat like people applying to adopt a child.
Yeah.
That's something I think about a lot.
Caller,
Thank you,
that
caller.
debate within recent weeks.
That's a big question there.
It's a huge debate, but I can tell you, thank you for raising that. I've been very skeptical of having to raise that on the program because I should not be afraid to have any controversial conversations, but that has really, that question has risen more and more within the last couple weeks.
The only thing is it gives rise to now a larger amount of children who are, for lack of a better word, unplanned and unwanted.
Yeah.
Because what happens when the parent doesn't have approval? I mean, we've seen what China does with that. And that's not necessarily a good solution either. So I understand why you brought it up, caller, and I don't disagree with your line of thinking. Unfortunately, the consequences of it, there might be unforeseen consequences that might also be very
And that is exactly why we should have that debate. Again, I thank the caller for raising that.
The
because
debate, yes.
There are pros,
yes,
but there are cons, as with everything. And we need to figure out if the pros outweigh the cons or if the cons outweigh the pros. Kemuel, my friend, your thoughts as we look to conclude this morning's edition of Talking Point.
So first, I'd like to respond to the caller. What I do think we can look at is probably a mandatory class for parenting and generally ensuring that your child is kept in the best state that is possible. And lastly, to close the program, what I would say is we're hoping for the best news from the situation that we are currently faced with, which is the missing child, and we're hoping to at least get something concrete by lunchtime or before.
Even before lunchtime, my friend. It's 9:28.
Hearing
good news at 9:29 will be the best thing. Sean, Michael Small, I can't say today is a good day to have a good day. And I suppose if there was any good news, it really gets shattered because of what we're experiencing and facing.
So just by the way I mentioned, our COVID death rate is not where it should be even now at 4 to 5 a day. That's not good. We're closing in on 4,000 deaths. So one of the callers mentioned how we perceive deaths in this country, killings in this country, accidents in this country, health crisis in this country, whichever. I do have to wonder if she was onto something there. If we are just numb towards death, unnecessary death, things that aren't necessarily part of natural life. And I do have to wonder, between the lack of community, between the lack of being a brother's keeper, between the lack of not having the village to raise a child, is that a reflection of leadership on the country? And I don't just mean politicians. Now it's across the board, right? Because at the end of the day, everybody complains on how incompetent, inefficient, lazy, etc. these politicians are. And yet we act surprised when things aren't done. Well, there are some things that it's not just up to them. We can't give the police a budget, but we can help protect and raise our children in our communities. That's all.
Ladies and gentlemen, too often do we criticize what we practice. Too often do we see hypocrisy within society. I share the thoughts expressed by my co-host that we often criticize our politicians. We often label them as lazy, as those who might as well stay quiet and say nothing at all. Nothing good comes out of their mouths and their actions are not worthy of even mentioning. But that too, we must always remember that society, a household, they have a responsibility and a role to play as well. And if we practice those same things we criticize, why do we play victims when we are hypocrites? We are not victims. We are just part of the problem. We pray for Kamani Francis' safe return, and we are apologetic that we have to conclude the show in such a depressing manner. but a smile will come on my face, and I promise you that I will shout in joy, and I will open the show tomorrow in the most happiest of manners if we get that good news that Kimani Francis is found alive. Thank you to all the teams, and thank you to all the members of society who are playing a major role and a minor role in ensuring that Kimani is returned home. Ladies and gentlemen, be your brother's keeper today. Pray, but don't pray. Don't pray, just only act as well. Paradise lost can be paradise refound, but it's up to you. This has been Talking Point. I'm Keaton Shaw. We'll see you again tomorrow morning. Bye-bye.